This is 100 Years of Cocks. You are listening to a podcast by Francis Thompson. I'm telling the story of 10 siblings from the Machel Cox family through the letters they wrote to each other. They were born in England between 1868 and 1884. 7 of them lived in England and 3 lived abroad in the colonies. This episode is all about bicycles. 4 brothers and 2 sisters set off from Studland for an 8-day cycling tour. They cycle 186 miles, 300 kilometres, but they did take a few trains as well, as Neville says, to avoid uninteresting country. If you are interested in following Arthur's lead, you may like to look up their route, but you don't have to use a Harmsworth atlas as Arthur did. Online maps are now much better. They cycled from Studland to Swanage, then took a train to Salisbury. They then cycled to Stonehenge, Devizes, Bradford-upon Avon and Bath. They then took a train from Bath to Chepstow through the Severn Tunnel. Then they cycled to Tintern Abbey, Monmouth, Ross-on-Wye, Hereford, Leominster and Ludlow. In Ludlow, they stayed at a hotel that is still there. I went and visited it last year. They then cycled up and over Clee Hill, then to Cleobury Mortimer and Bewdley. Then they took a train to Stourbridge, then cycled to Neville, where they lived as children. They then took a train to Birmingham and then Coventry. Then they cycled to Kenilworth, Warwick and Stratford-upon Avon. And finally, they took a train back to Sydenham in South London. Neville's initial thought was, would the baggage issue make a cycling tour too complicated? Bikes in 1907 were heavy and solid, and saddlebags would make them even heavier, as saddlebags were made from canvas. They were not made from the light, waterproof material that we have today. Cuthbert said that his bicycle was light, but I don't really believe him. I think it was probably a bit lighter than the heavy ones, like Edmund's, but I'm sure all of their bikes were considerably heavier than the ones we ride today. In 1907, bicycles were made by Enfield, Raleigh and Sunbeam. We know several of the siblings rode an Enfield bicycle. Most of the siblings took either 1 or 2 Gladstone bags on the tour with them, named after Gladstone, the Prime Minister. These were light portmanteau bags, similar to the type of carpet bag that Mary Poppins carries. But the beauty of Neville's planning was that his route followed England's small railway branch lines. The siblings carried a small amount of necessities, as well as a rain cape and puncture repair kits and tools in their saddlebags, whilst they took their Gladstone bags to the railway station and told the railway staff which station the bags were to be taken to. On the first day, the siblings would have left their bags at Swanage station, paid a fee, and asked for the bags to be taken to Devizes station. On the second leg of the tour, the bags travelled from Devizes station to Chepstow, whilst the siblings cycled. When they arrived in Chepstow, they cycled to the railway station to pick their bags up before going to a hotel, or an hotel, which was the correct way to say it then. Of course, Dr. Beeching is the name that is associated with small English country railway stations. I'll tell you about him later, if you're not familiar with the name. Before I read the letters describing the bicycling tour, I will read the discussion about bicycles that the siblings had by letter from October 1906 to July 1907. Arthur's letter, October 1906. Aldwyn will like to hear that his bicycle, which he very kindly left with me, is going strong and behaves very sensibly. Avice's letter, October 1906. I find most people have Hertfordshire put on their letters and parcels as it is safer, as they often go wrong and go to Hereford in Herefordshire instead. My bicycle went wrong and it went to Hertford in Cheshire, and it was 5 days before I got it. My bicycle runs splendidly now and is really satisfactory. Dennis is perhaps going to have one, and then I can go out with him. It will be rather jolly. Notes on Avice's letter. It has just occurred to me that post and parcels, and even bicycles, were accidentally sent to the wrong town because postcodes hadn't yet been invented. Avice's bike would have been sent on the train, unaccompanied, in the guard's van, and then she would have gone down to the station to collect it. Imagine if we could do that today. Hertford in Hertfordshire is spelled with an E. That was where Avice was living in 1906. Hertford in Cheshire is spelled with an A. That was where Avice's bike was accidentally sent to. Before the advent of postcodes, which amazingly was not until 1959, it's not surprising that things were accidentally posted to the wrong place, especially if towns had very similar sounding names. Edmund's letter, November 1906. I must add that my old bicycle also runs splendidly now when I am going downhill and am not too much choked up with mud. Avice's letter, November 1906. Mrs. G's sister-in-law has died after a long illness, and she has gone back to Hertford. I and nurse are left in charge of the children here. I think Folkestone is a delightful place, and now the children have bicycles, we can have very jolly rides together. Edmund's letter, February 1907. Yesterday, being a bright frosty day, I decided to ride over to Darley Dale, the other side of Matlock, and have some lunch with Whittington, who used to be the vicar at Long Eaton. But I had not gone a mile when my chain broke, and in spite of the efforts of a village blacksmith, I had to return. Fortunately this morning I've had a card to say that my new bicycle is now ready for me, so I am now off to walk into Clay Cross and fetch it. I hope it will be satisfactory. I have ordered a 3-speed gear, which ought to be useful in this hilly country. Avice's letter, February 1907. Edmund, mind you say next time what you think of your 3-speed gear bicycle. Neville's letter, Pretoria, February 1907. I'm getting to be quite a bike rider. I did 3 trips last week of 25 miles in the rain and over awful roads. Something like the shortcut from Neville to Salisbury, if you remember. It is not so much the mileage as the awful bumpings and continual dodging of stones, etc. It would be a treat to ride on an English road again. Our best roads are like the cobblestone ones around Preston, and 14 miles an hour is really hard riding. Does any budget member think it possible to arrange a bicycle tour of any interesting part of England, say for a week, in case I do come home? Or is the baggage question too much of a bother? Cuthbert's letter, March 1907. Cuthbert wrote a letter in March in which he said he was disappointed with his bicycle, but this whole budget has been lost. Bernard's letter, April 1907. Cuthbert, I am so sorry your bicycle is so disappointing, but I don't think the inner tube is anything to do with Enfield. Probably it is a Dunlop Welsh, and quite possibly the inner tyre may have been removed long ago and an old second-hand one substituted, if you have ever left your bicycle at a shop you didn't know well. With regards to a cycling tour in the summer, I agree that it is a splendid idea. Our rooms at Studland Bay are taken until August the 29th. Father and mother propose to go on somewhere else for a week before returning to Sydenham, and it is thought that that would be the best time. If a contingent of the family start from Studland, however, it would take the best part of a week to get to Derbyshire. Looking at the Wye Valley on the map, it is much nearer to Studland than Derbyshire. Also, if Edmund happens to be in Derbyshire then, it would be much nearer to him than coming to meet us at Studland. The same applies to Enid if she is in Liverpool at the end of August, which I should think, however, is hardly likely. I doubt very much if I can go, as I think my partner, Hunt, may be away on holiday. Arthur's letter, April 1907. I am greatly interested over the proposed bicycle tour. I am afraid I cannot go myself, but I shall follow your adventures with interest. Neville used to have a weakness for heaps of hedge clippings in the ditch. It is best to leave him when he feels like that. Avice and Vera, too, are hardly to be depended on, I believe, if a motor crosses their path. Edmund will be all right, I expect. You won't need any bicycle bells anyhow. But of course, if Edmund's 3-speed gear happens to get fixed at the highest speed, no one but Vera will be able to keep him in sight. It is just possible that I might be able to join you all for a day or two, in which case all will be well. Vera's letter, May 1907. I hope the bicycling tour will come off. It will be such fun. I also hope it will be in the Wye Valley. As it will be in the first week of September, I do hope you will be able to manage it, Cuthbert. Do come if you can. The more there are, the nicer it is. As Cuthbert is so down on Enfield bicycles, I must give mine a good word. I've had it for 5 years, and I've never had to pay a penny on it, except when I had it re-enamelled a year ago, and for 1 or 2 punctures. In fact, when the front brake got broken in the train, a short time after I first had it, they gave me a new brake for nothing. Arthur, I am not frightened of a motor. I rather think it was Avice, Cuthbert and Bernard who fell into the hedge at the sight of one. I well remember Neville's fondness for hedge clippings in the ditch. Enid, mind you come on the bicycling tour if you possibly can. Edmund's letter, May 1907. After due consideration, I agree with you about the cycling tour. As I was writing to Mother a short time ago and telling her, I am doubtful about being able to arrange to get myself free at the time proposed, as it is rather far and my vicar may be away, but I shall certainly do my very utmost to manage it, if only for a few days. So I hope the other members will take the matter up and arrange it, and then let me know their arrangements. I think all the budget members ought to make a very special effort to get together for this cycling tour, as it will be the first thing arranged after a budget proposition, and a meeting of the whole budget would certainly be most enjoyable. I am glad to say that my bicycle has been behaving very well since I last wrote, and has been no trouble, but no one need be afraid of my riding too fast. I prefer to take my time when I can. My cycle is also a heavy one, so as better to stand any knocking about. I hardly think Arthur will dare to show up for the budget cycling tour after all his personal remarks, but I hope he may be able to screw up his courage and come all the same. Avice's letter, May 1907. Is the following list right for the bicycling tour? I vote for the Wye Valley and the first week in September. Neville, proposer. Avice, Edmund, Vera, Enid, Cuthbert. Arthur, for 2 or 3 days maybe. Burr, perhaps. What fun it will be. Enid, Cyril and Burr, I wish you all success on your bicycling tour in France. I hope Burr won't need to use Enid's waterproof bicycling skirt. Burr says he has one for wet weather. Enid's letter, May 1907. As you all know, Cyril, Bernard and I are spending a fortnight in Brittany, cycling and sightseeing. Bernard's inner tube has come to grief, and he has had to buy a new one. Cuthbert will be interested to hear that it was an Enfield after all, and a very poor one. Cyril says his prejudice against Enfield bicycles is intensified, though Vera seems to have been very lucky. Bernard's letter, June 1907. Cuthbert, I must apologise for throwing doubt on your account of your tyre. I found that mine was an Enfield tyre as well, and it certainly didn't seem a good one when we inspected it at a cycle shop in Brittany. I was obliged to purchase a new inner tube. By the by, I shall be able to come on the cycling tour for a few days. I must be at the office on Monday, September the 2nd, so I should be available the Thursday to Sunday preceding. The Wye Valley seems generally favoured. I hope there will be a photographer among the party, so as to snap Neville when he decides to go in for a heap of hedge clippings, as I think will be quite likely. Cuthbert's letter, June 1907. Talking of bicycles, I have again had my chain off, and 3 or 4 links have had to be replaced. Still, it is an extremely comfortable machine and light. As it seems that we are all reminiscing about that memorable bicycling incident on the Isle of Wight all those years ago, may I beg to state that I did not fall off at the sound of a motor approaching. I believe it was only Burr and Avice, though Aldwin was so frightened that he pedalled furiously away down another side road. Arthur's letter, June 1907. I expect Aldwin's next budget letter, in about a year's time, will contain an indignant denial of his part in that inglorious cycling incident with the motor on the Isle of Wight. Edmund's letter, July 1907. I am quite hoping that some capable member of the budget will send out to the inexperienced cycle tourists a list of articles needed on tour. I really mean this. It would be most valuable. Don't send them with the budget, otherwise we should not all get the list in time. I am glad to say that I am now hoping to join the family gathering at Studland on Monday, August the 26th, and I understand it is now arranged that our bicycle tour commences on the following Thursday, August the 29th, when I hope all would at any rate make a start together, or meet somewhere on that day or the following morning. It is really about time we were having some definite arrangement. I will certainly bring my camera with me for a few interesting snapshots. There surely ought to be plenty of opportunities. Avice's letter, July 1907. I have drawn a sketch of the Isle of Wight bicycling incident. I hope you all like it. It is difficult to draw bicycles and to get the personalities correct. Enid's letter, July 1907. I do hope the bicycling tour will be a great success. I am so sorry not to be able to join it. It is quite a disappointment, as I have not seen Edmund for 6 years. Whilst Neville has been staying here, we have had all the maps out, and he has sketched out a delightful tour and taken a great deal of trouble over it, working out how many miles to bicycle each day, etc. So I do hope the weather will be propitious. You must all remember that if the tour should come to an end anywhere near Liverpool, you must write and let me know. We have enough beds to put up 4. Bernard's letter, July 1907. I am glad Edmund is bringing his camera with him. I dare say we can arrange some interesting episodes for him to snapshot. If only we had a photograph of the motor incident on the Isle of Wight, there would not be so many legends about it. The illustration of the bicycling incident is splendid, especially Aldwin in a funk, disappearing away down a lane as the motor approaches. Neville's letter, July 1907. Avice, I did enjoy your drawings. The cycle incident is too realistic for words. I laughed uproariously over the drawing of my poor brothers and sisters who crashed with fright at the sound of a motor approaching behind them. Enid, you did not say what a lot of help you gave me in sketching out the bike tour. I couldn't have done it without the use of all your maps. I do wish you could come. now join the siblings at Studland on Monday 26th of August 1907. Edmund has just arrived on the train from Derbyshire. He enjoys a few days' holiday with the family before 6 of the siblings depart on the bicycling tour. Arthur is the only one of the siblings at Studland who does not depart on the cycling tour. I imagine he had conflicting feelings. He has been in Studland for weeks, enjoying himself with his siblings, and he really should return to his wife and son, especially as Dorothy's poor health continues. Yet Arthur and Neville, who are close in age, get on extremely well, and Neville returns to England on leave so infrequently, and the cycling group are going to visit Enville, their childhood home, scene of so many of Neville and Arthur's childhood adventures. I imagine Arthur knew he was doing the right thing in choosing to return to Terrington. However, he would have been sad not to be going bicycling with his siblings. Dr. Cox's recommendation was that the party should cycle through the Wye forest. He knows it from his time as a clergyman when the family lived at Enville in the 1880s. He regards the Wye forest as one of the few virgin forests left in England and considers it well worth a visit. If you want to look it up, you spell it Wyre. The cyclists would have stopped at the Wye forest before continuing on and cycling downhill into Bewdley. The members of the bicycling tour were Edmund, aged 38, Neville, aged 35, Bernard, 29, Cuthbert, 25, Avice, 23, and Vera, aged 22. Edmund is number 2 out of the 10 siblings. He is an Anglican priest. He lives in Woolly Moor and is in charge of 3 churches in Claycross in Derbyshire. He brought his trusty Enfield bicycle down to Studland on the train. He approves of the route that Neville has planned and is looking forward to some good cycling. Conveniently, his vicar has not gone away, so he is able to be a part of the cycling trip. Edmund has packed the minimum amount possible into his bicycle saddlebags. He is not sending a Gladstone bag onto the station every day, as his siblings are doing. Edmund has brought his camera and is looking forward to getting some good snaps on the tour. He thinks it quite likely that Avice will fall off, and he hopes to get a snap of her doing so. Neville is sibling number 4. Arthur is sibling number 3. Neville is hugely excited that the day has arrived. He arrived in England in June from South Africa and has visited all his siblings so far. He has been poring over maps, planning the route and deciding which towns to stay overnight in. Enid helped a great deal with the route planning whilst Neville was in Liverpool. He has heard a great deal about Stonehenge and has always wanted to see it for himself. Bradford-upon Avon has a very pretty church, and Tintern Abbey is another architectural site to see. Enville is on the list as it was one of Neville's favourite boyhood homes, where Arthur and Neville had plenty of adventures. Wilfred is sibling number 5, and he is in Canada. Enid is the eldest sibling. She is not joining the cyclists either. Bernard is sibling number 6. He is a stockbroker in the City of London. He has been on holiday with the family in Studland and is enthusiastic about cycling for a week in the countryside with 5 of his siblings. He is very pleased that all the arrangements have been made satisfactorily. Aldwyn is sibling number 7. He is in Africa. Cuthbert is number 8. He is a schoolmaster at Berkhamsted School. He is enjoying the school holidays and the good weather. He's been doing plenty of cycling practice as he's worried about keeping up with Vera. He is also worried that Edmund is fitter than him and has a better bicycle, and Cuthbert hopes he won't get left behind. Avice is number 9. She is a keen cyclist and is well prepared for the tour. She ordered some new cycling clothes from her dressmaker and is especially pleased with her new waterproof cape. She is particularly thrilled that her favourite older brother, Neville, is home from Africa on leave. She never expected 6 of the siblings to be setting off together on a cycling tour and is anticipating an enjoyable trip. Vera is number 10 and self-christened as the budget baby. She is 22 years old and is also the fittest. She can outrun all of her brothers, and if it wasn't for the long skirt she is obliged to wear for cycling, she could outcycle them all too. She is competitive and expects to be a faster cyclist than most of her brothers. Her bicycle is also an Enfield, and with its 3 gears she can easily get up hills without having to stop and walk. She is thrilled that the party planned to visit Neville, her birthplace. Edmund, Neville, Bernard, Cuthbert, Avice and Vera. Neville wrote a detailed letter all about the cycling tour, which was sent to Arthur, no doubt because Arthur was sad about not joining his siblings. The letter was then put into the budget and went around so all could read it. Neville writes his letter at the end of day 6 from Ludlow. The contents of the letter are fascinating, but so is the letter itself. It is on headed notepaper from the Angel Hotel in Ludlow. No street name or street number. Ludlow was not a big place. But the bit that tickles me is that the Angel Hotel had telephone number 4. My grandparents in the 1970s had a telephone number which only had 6 digits, but the idea that at one point Ludlow had only 4 telephones is quite unbelievable to us today. Bernard has written at the top of the first page, Neville's contribution put in by Bernard. Under this Arthur has scrawled, but where did he get it from? Neville's letter. Angel Hotel, Ludlow, 2nd of September 1907. Cycling tour. Dear Arthur, we are enjoying ourselves hugely. I think that I can say that for all of us. Today has been the only really wet day, and then it has only drizzled, so that our capes kept us dry. And the run from Hereford was nearly all downhill, apart from a climb of 600 feet over Dinmore Hill, with a strong wind behind us, so that we had a very easy day of it. I will give you a rough outline of the tour. Thursday, August the 29th. We all biked from Studland into Swanage for the 9:10 train as far as Salisbury. The cathedral was really grand, especially the outside. Avice, who was not quite up to the mark, went on by train to Devizes, where we were to stay the first night. We started biking at 2:45 after seeing Avice off. We had a lovely ride as far as Stonehenge in the valley of the Avon. Had to pay 1 shilling each to see the stones. To my mind rather disappointing, as the circles were much smaller than I expected, the outside one being not more than 40 foot across, I should think. Yet they were very grand, and I am glad I saw them. Cuthbert punctured here, so I stayed behind to help him. We then rode on after the others, and 2 miles on came across Bernard punctured. We never caught Edmund and Vera again until we reached Devizes. The ride across Salisbury Plain was very dreary and uninteresting, about 10 miles of it, with no village at all. We took a military road in error by turning off a 1/4 mile too soon after we left Stonehenge, so we had no tea. The descent from the plain was very abrupt and steep. The run into Devizes was pretty, about 4 miles, and we arrived there at 7:15 p.m, finding Edmund, Vera and Avice at the station. We put up at an hotel and were well revived. We were hungry. Devizes was not up to much. Friday, 30th of August. We started off at 10 a.m. and reached Bradford-upon Avon at 12:30, a lovely old place. The old Saxon church and the more modern one are both very interesting. We had lunch there and then rode on to Bath. The cathedral was interesting, and also the old Roman baths. We took the train from Bath through the 7-tunnel junction to Chepstow and arrived at 6:45 p.m. This was to avoid uninteresting country, but also so we could begin our ride through the Wye Valley on the Saturday. It is a funny old town on a hill. We stayed at a funny little place, not very comfortable, but good enough. Avice was feeling much better and bicycled that day. Saturday, 31st of August. We saw over Chepstow Castle in the morning, a huge place and very interesting, with some lovely views. Started off at 10 and rode up the Wye Valley. The sudden sight of Tintern as we came down the hill was really beautiful, and the Abbey is very grand. We stopped and looked around the Abbey ruins, and Edmund took photographs. We rode on through to Monmouth for lunch, very pretty all the way. Monmouth was most uninteresting. Cuthbert and I took a 5-mile walk up the Kymin, where we had a grand view over the surrounding country. We rode on to Ross at 4 and arrived there at 6, stopping at a comfortable hotel. A lovely ride all the way, most enjoyable. Sunday, 1st of September. We left Ross at 10 and rode to Hereford, arriving there at 1 p.m, a very pretty ride. We had lunch, saw over All Saints, which was most interesting, and then we saw a bit of the cathedral. But as it was Sunday, we couldn't really see round it. Rather low and squat to look at from outside, and very heavy looking as to the tower. We had a walk along the river, then tea, and then we all went to the service at 6:30. The cathedral looked very grand and impressive. Burr left us in the evening, as he had to return to London. He was so perky, I've never seen him so jolly and so amusing. We were very sorry to lose him. We stayed at a funny little apartment place and had to climb up a staircase about 2 feet wide. Accommodation was not too bad, considering. Monday the 2nd of September. We got up at 7 this morning and looked over Hereford Cathedral after breakfast, which was most interesting. Some lovely windows, and the roof effect was very magnificent. Left Hereford at 10 and rode over Dinmore Hill to Leominster, arriving at 11:30. A nice ride if it had not been for the drizzle with a wind behind us. Leominster has a splendid parish church, the north side being Norman and very massive, and the south side early English, the outside being decorated, and there was a perpendicular window at the west end. A most curious mixture, but I liked it, as it gave one such a good idea of the different styles. There was a ducking stool here, most curious. Fine old houses in the streets. We rode on to Ludlow at 1:15, reaching here at 4 in a drizzle. Another pretty ride, considering. Another splendid church here, very large and most interesting. The chancel really was magnificent, with more lovely windows depicting the life of St. Lawrence in about 24 pictures. A lot of the windows were very interesting, and there was a lovely reredos with carved stone figures. The choir misericords being also very old and quaint. You would have enjoyed it very much, Arthur. We've also been over the old castle, which is on a very large scale, but not as large as Chepstow, but I think rather more interesting, as one can see so easily what everything was for. The old circular nave to the chapel was most interesting, and there were more fine stone chimney pieces in the state rooms. The view from the top of the massive keep was very fine. We are very comfortable here, and the Angel is a grand old hotel. We are just going to have supper. Everyone is most agreeable, and there is no friction between us. Today has been the only really wet day, mostly drizzle, but our capes kept us dry. We all send our best wishes to you and Dorothy and Christopher, and regret exceedingly that you are not with us. Can't yet give you my plans. We are at Neville tomorrow, and both Cuthbert and Edmund will leave us next Wednesday. Edmund at Birmingham and Cuthbert at Warwick. Yours in haste, Neville. Scribbled at the bottom of Neville's letter were messages from the others, agreeing with Neville's version of events. Read with great interest, Avice. Examined and found correct, Veronica. Not examined, but believed to be correct. Hope to read it later. Cuthbert. Not examined, but trust to Neville's veracity. Edmund. Underneath those messages was a message from Neville. What cheek! I only asked for signatures to express regret that you were not with us. Notes on Neville's letter. 112 years after the siblings cycled through the Wye Valley, I travelled from Australia to the UK for a holiday, and in August 2019 I spent 2 days following some of the 1907 cycling route from Tintern Abbey to Bewdley. In their discussions after the cycling tour, the siblings mentioned the glorious ride from Chepstow to Tintern Abbey and how the ruins emerge as you descend the hill. Several of them wrote that this view was one of the best bits of the cycle ride. There are a lot more trees now, and you can't see the ruined abbey clearly until you are almost upon it, but it is still a very striking view, with the ruins suddenly appearing as you drive down the hill into Tintern. Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries in the 16th century are the reason beautiful church buildings like Tintern Abbey fell into disrepair. If you've never been to Tintern, the ruins are huge, with a very peaceful atmosphere, next to the River Wye, which flows lazily along. I took a photo of Tintern Abbey from almost exactly the same spot as my great-grandfather Edmund did. Edmund's photo, taken on Saturday the 31st of August 1907, is almost identical to my photo, taken on Friday 23rd of August 2019. 112 years apart. The ruins are just the same. It is just the road in front that has changed, now wider and covered in tarmac. I will put the two photos on my Twitter page. Tintern railway station was once a busy place, as the trains brought great crowds of people to visit the ruins of the Abbey. The old station building and the platform are still there. The tracks are now grassed over, and there is a tea shop and a children's playground. In the quiet of the early morning, I was the only one there, and it doesn't take much to imagine a steam train whistling as you visualise it approaching through the trees. The family dropped their Gladstone bags at Chepstow railway station, and the train carrying them would have gone through Tintern station on Saturday 31st of August 1907 on its way to Ross-on-Wye, where the siblings collected their bags at the end of the day. The road winds pleasantly north from Tintern to Monmouth, trees, hills, the River Wye. The countryside is indeed very beautiful. It is a very long river, and for much of its length it is actually the border between England and Wales. I followed the River Wye upstream, ignoring the larger main road, instead choosing to drive along the quiet minor roads, which the siblings would have cycled along. Symonds Yat is a beautiful little place, with a small passenger ferry linking the two sides of the river, pulled across by hand. The Saracen's Head Inn, right on the water, is a lovely old pub, and the steam trains would have puffed right past it. The Wye Valley is now classified as an area of outstanding natural beauty. It hadn't yet been given that label in 1907. The whole area is simply beautiful. I could easily imagine a steam train puffing along the riverbank, carrying the Gladstone bags belonging to my relatives, whilst they cycled along the country lanes. Ross-on-Wye was the siblings' next stop. An old engine shed is still standing, now a garden centre, but the rest of the station has long since disappeared under industrial buildings. There is no railway in Ross anymore. Hereford was the next place to visit, with a lovely old cathedral and an extremely ornate bishop's palace next door, dating back to the 12th century. I know a fair few Anglican bishops in Australia, and I don't think any of them live in a palace like that, certainly not with Tudor chimneys. Neville wrote, "We left Ross at 10, rode to Hereford, arriving there at 1 p.m, a very pretty ride." Neville's account included how long it took to cycle from one town to the next, although I don't know if they cycled directly from Ross to Hereford or if they stopped off along the way. If you put the two towns into an internet search engine, it calculates that a cyclist today, following the likely 1907 route, would take 90 minutes, compared to the 3 hours it took in 1907. It is unlikely that these quiet back roads had tarmac on them in 1907. Neville writes that English roads are much better than South African roads, where he gets numerous punctures. The English road surface was probably a kind of compacted, pebbly gravel, and it is therefore surprising that the party only had 2 punctures during the whole trip. Incidentally, I love their language about bike punctures. When they were near Stonehenge, Neville wrote, "Cuthbert punctured here, and 2 miles further on we came across Bernard punctured." My imagination runs wild with the idea of both Cuthbert and Bernard puncturing. Nowadays we use different words, and we would describe how our bike had got a puncture. The 1907 language is so delightfully descriptive. I don't know about you, but I picture the Harry Potter scene with the Dursleys, when the aunt is magically inflated by Harry, floats around the town, and then later is captured and punctured. "Miss Dursley has been punctured and her memory has been modified," it says in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Neville continued, "Leominster has a splendid parish church, the north side being Norman and very massive, and the south side early English, the outside being decorated, and there was a perpendicular window at the west end. A most curious mixture, but I liked it, as it gave one such a good idea of the different styles. There was a ducking stool here, most curious, and fine old houses in the streets." In 2019, I was surprised to find Leominster Church unlocked with no one inside. But what blew me away was the ducking stool I found inside, the exact same ducking stool that Neville writes about in 1907. I couldn't quite believe it when I saw it. I think I imagined that it would have been taken to the local museum. But no, the parish church keeps it as an historical artefact, whilst acknowledging its painful and sexist history. The decision to use a ducking stool was generally made by a wealthy, educated man. The person being punished was generally poor, uneducated, and female. Interestingly, this ducking stool was last used in 1809 when Jenny Pipes was ducked in the river for foul and abusive language, and this is the last ever recorded use of a ducking stool anywhere in England. Neville wrote, "We rode on to Ludlow at 1:15, reaching here at 4 in a drizzle. Another pretty ride considering. Another splendid church here, very large and most interesting. You would have enjoyed it very much, Arthur. We have also been over Ludlow Castle, which is on a very large scale, but not as large as Chepstow. The view from the top of the massive keep was very fine. We are very comfortable here, and the Angel is a grand old hotel. We are just going to have supper. Everyone is most agreeable, and there is no friction between us. Today has been the only really wet day, mostly drizzle, but our capes kept us dry." Having already done some internet research, I knew the Angel Hotel in Ludlow still existed, but I was delighted to see it for myself. An old coaching inn built in 1555, with a carriageway going under an arch through to the stables behind. The old building has exposed black wooden beams, with white painted walls in between. My imagination went into overdrive. I knew that the siblings would have cycled through this archway on Monday the 2nd of September 1907, and they would have left their bicycles in the outhouses or stables behind the hotel. There is something quite remarkable about reading something that your family did and then seeing the exact same location where it took place 112 years later. Today the Angel Hotel is a wine bar, and it only uses the front rooms on the ground and first floor. The stables and the rooms at the back through the carriageway have now all been renovated and rebuilt, and are now apartments and shops and not part of the Angel. You can see it all for yourself online using maps. Bernard later wrote, "Generally, Neville was up an hour before breakfast, cleaning the machines, pumping up the tyres, etc. Edmund lent an air of respectability to the party, and his masterful voice was very useful at times. I enjoyed dinner and red wine at the Angel, sitting in one of the first floor overhanging oriel windows, watching Ludlow go by. I imagined Neville getting up early before breakfast, going out to the stables to clean and oil the bicycles, pump up the tyres, and check for punctures. I wondered if the room I was sitting in had been the dining room or the sitting room in 1907. Did the siblings play circular patience in this very room where I was currently enjoying my glass of red wine?" I'm going to leave it there for this week. The siblings have had dinner. They've played circular patience and they've gone to bed at the Angel Hotel. 112 years later, I have enjoyed red wine and tapas at the Angel Wine Bar, and then I returned to my Airbnb accommodation in Ludlow. Neville has plenty more to describe as the family leave Ludlow and cycle up Clee Hill. In 2019, on a boiling hot summer's day, I hired a bike and continued following their route. I'll tell you all about it in the next episode of 100 Years of Cox. Machel Cox Letters is on Twitter, where I share photos and sketches from the budget. Or you can send me an email, machelcoxletters@gmail.com. You have been listening to 100 Years of Cox. Thank you for listening.